Tweet @TodaySOR.
Ina O'Dwyer from Cahirciveen in County Kerry wrote an open letter to the Disability Minister Finian McGrath last week after he said some families are dumping relatives in residential facilities. Ina's son Bernard, who's nearly 41, has profound special needs and has lived in St Mary's of the Angels in Beaufort in County Kerry since 1981, and she joins me now from the Radio Kerry studio in Tralee. Ina O'Dwyer, good morning to you.
Good morning, Sean.
Now, we'll come to Minister McGrath and what he said, because he feels he was misquoted or misunderstood. But first of all, you might just tell me about Bernard, your son, who, as we say, is nearly 41 now.
Bernard was born in 1976 on the 5th of August in St Catherine's Hospital in Tralee in County Kerry. And Bernard's birth was very difficult. There were lots of complications, and those complications have left Bernard profoundly and severely mentally and physically disabled. Bernard was a very sick baby. We were in and out of hospitals to different doctors, trying to find a cure for him, trying to help him, and we were distraught for the first years of Bernard's life. I couldn't accept the fact that Bernard would never be normal. I really couldn't accept it. And when our daughter was born 3 years later, I could see, even when she was 6 months old, I could see that Bernard was almost still at her level. He hadn't progressed, and it was very hard to accept that.
Yes, and his birthday now just coming up in 4 days' time. He'll be 41, Ina. As you say, just tell me about his condition. Is he able to do anything for himself? Does he communicate? How mobile is he, or is he mobile at all?
Bernard can do absolutely nothing for himself, Sean, and he needs 24-hour care. Bernard is a baby. Bernard will always be a baby. Bernard will always need 24-hour care. He does not walk. He does not talk. He cannot feed himself. It breaks my heart when Bernard has a heavy cold. He can't clean his nose. He's depending on other people to do all of those things for him. Bernard wears nappies. They call them pads now. I call them nappies because that's what he wears. Bernard has to be lifted. What Bernard can do is, in his wheelchair, he can totter along with his feet, which gives him a great freedom. And that's a fantastic thing about St Mary of the Angels, where he is, because there is a number of open areas that he can walk in and out of by himself. And when he's home with me, my house is open plan, he can do that as well. But he hasn't the same freedom, because obviously a house will never be as big as where he is now.
And tell me more, Ina, about St Mary of the Angels.
St Mary of the Angels, the site there was donated by the Doyle family to the Franciscan nuns in 1968. They had one daughter, Mary Rose, and she became a Franciscan nun. And that family donated the site to the children of Kerry, to the mentally handicapped, and that's another word that's not supposed to be used, but to the mentally handicapped children of Kerry for their use.
And how many people then are cared for in it, like Bernard?
There is 77 residents there at the moment, Sean. There used to be over 100.
Now, I know what upset you grievously was comments made by Minister Finian McGrath about implementing a policy in line with the HSE report from 2011, time to move on from congregated settings. I suppose a congregated setting would be another description of St Mary of the Angels there in Beaufort. And his argument is that there are a lot of people who are in a position to be in maybe in a more community and, if you like, individual kind of care, and that they should move on from that, and that is something that he believes should happen, and that a lot of people in those care settings would want to have brought about.
And I think that is absolutely wonderful, and I'm all for it, Sean. there's such a wide variety. You know, you have a label called disability. If I was walking with a limp, I would be called disabled. You know, it's a huge umbrella, but there are so many different directions, or not even directions, like there's so many different types of disability. Bernard is severely and profoundly mentally and physically handicapped. Why doesn't Finian McGrath hear me say that? I wish he wasn't, but he is. If there are people there who want to move, who will benefit by moving, I'm all for it, and I really hope they will get the supports that are promised to them.
Yes, and he also makes the point that his comments were never directed at people like yourself or families like yours. And he makes the point that as a parent with a daughter who has an intellectual disability, he totally understands your feelings. He says his comments were directed at people who never visit family members in congregated settings.
His comments were directed at me and parents like me. We were judged and we were pointed at. He has put us into a box and he's labelled us bad parents.
Well, I think he would specifically and vigorously deny exactly what you are saying. And he says that, you know, and he wants to reassure people like yourself and others that there's no question of forcing Bernard and other people out of the setting that they're in.
He's saying that now because of the pressure that has come about since September of last year, when we discovered that our loved ones, their names were on waiting lists for houses throughout Kerry, because we were never notified. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about the policy now, but this policy, they spent 10 years writing the policy. Did any one of those writers visit my son? And I'm only going to speak about my son, but I know I'm speaking for other parents. Did they come to meet them, to see that they were real people, to find out what their needs were? Would they be capable of living in an ordinary community?
Clearly, anybody listening to what you're saying at the start of our conversation, Ina, would know that there is no way that your son Bernard would be in a position to cater for himself. But Finian McGrath, he actually did go to some places, and he says he visited, and I'm quoting now from a piece in the Irish Times last week, I visited one institution recently in the southeast, and one young man called me aside and said, Finian, get me out of here. I want to have my own place. I want to have my breakfast and dinner when I want, watch my own television in my own bedroom. And he was in this institution, he was in his early 30s, and he was placed there when he was about 7. Now, Finian McGrath says his job, and he hopes to be able to do this for about 200 people this year, is to get people like that young man out of those institutions who want to go and provide the support that will allow them to have a life of their own and a better life elsewhere.
Well, I think, Sean, if somebody is capable of walking up to Finian McGrath and even calling him Finian, even recognising him, knowing him by name, and say, I don't want to live here, get me out of here, I applaud Finian McGrath for saving that person. But I don't know one of the residents in St Mary of the Angels who are like that. And there's other beautiful care centres throughout the country. I honestly do not know anybody who would be capable of doing that.
Now, we did invite him on the programme. Now, he has declined that invitation, but I know that he has offered to meet you and to talk to you personally. Has that conversation taken place, or is it going to?
No, it hasn't taken place. I still have to reply to his apology because I have to think about it.
But you say that if people can be catered for in other community settings that are less, I suppose, institutional, you might say, would you somehow be concerned that your Bernard, even if he's not moved and others are, that somehow his care or his setting would somehow be diminished?
It will completely diminish. what they're planning to do now, Sean, is to get out as many as they can because they have a target to meet. We're back to the numbers again. These aren't human beings. It's just playing with numbers. As Bernard is 41, there are many, many more residents in St. Mary of the Angels, a lot older than Bernard. And as they leave this earth, it's like tipping a pile of rubble, just tipping it gradually and gradually, getting them out one way or another. And who's going to be left in that beautiful, beautiful place?
Yeah, but he, in his statement now given to the programme, he does acknowledge the tremendous care, and these are his words, the tremendous care that St Mary of the Angels and other care homes provide for people with disabilities, and again would highlight that reassurances have been given to service users that they will not be forced to move against their will.
Yes, that's what he's saying now. And again, I say that's because of the pressure that has been brought on by parents since this thing came to light. I don't know how they can guarantee to give these residents the same quality of life when they're out in the community. And what really hurts me is the policy makers who drew up this fantastic plan that looks great in writing want people like my son Bernard to be ordinary people living ordinary lives in ordinary places. Well, I would love to meet that person, because if they can make my son ordinary, I will say to them, it's a pity I didn't meet you when Bernard was a baby, because I would love if he was ordinary. I'd be a grandmother all over again. I'd have a lovely life with my son, but he's not ordinary. My point is that he is extraordinary and he needs extraordinary care.
And finally, and I don't mean to rush you, but we're just a little up against time, Ina.
Okay.
What is your sense about Bernard's future now?
I feel very insecure about Bernard's future, because when Bernard got a home with the Franciscan nuns, I felt that Bernard was safe. The reality of life is that I will not always be here. But once Bernard was safe in his loving, caring home that is St Mary of the Angels, that if anything happened to me in the morning, Bernard will always be cared for. He will always be safe. His family will always be able to visit him. But now I am so worried, as many other parents like me, especially older parents. They can't sleep at night with the worry, what is going to happen to their children when they're gone.
Well, look, Ina, thank you so much for talking to us, and let's hope that in the few days between now and Bernard's 41st birthday on Saturday, that you get some sort of assurance and comfort that the very best outcomes will be there for him and indeed for yourself. Ina, thank you indeed for talking to us.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Tweet @TodaySOR.
And we've had a lot of reaction to my conversation earlier with Ina O'Dwyer, mother of Bernard, who has those profound special needs. The story of the life of Bernard is heart-wrenching, and his mother is a wonderful person, says John. It certainly puts midlife crises into perspective, so it does indeed. We should be grateful for our health, he says. Another listener, Sean O'Haragon, Waterville and Kilkenny. Anybody from or in South Kerry who knows Ina knows how wonderful, caring and passionate a parent and person she is. Finian McGrath needs to listen carefully and change tack as a result. And another listener, Edel in Swords, Ina is 100% correct. I 100% support her. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. There are people who, for various reasons, need the safety of their own sheltered community. Some will suffer terribly in the general community. That, as I say, from Edel in Swords, and Finian McGrath at pains to point out that he wants to reassure people like the parents of Bernard, people like Ina, that there's going to be no pressure to have them moved. But obviously there are other cases where a move to a more community-based setting is appropriate and is planned for now.